It's to 11 here on 107.3. It's one of mankind's really most primeval needs to bury or in some way ritualise the remains of our dead. And we do so in many ways, from the sepulchre to the war memorial, where we commemorate those who paid the ultimate price for our freedom. Now, for Australians, the iconic symbol in so many ways is the tragedy of Gallipoli and that campaign back in 1915. It's the epitome of the Anzac spirit, mateship and adversity. Now, surprisingly, no one had numbered or memorialised the West Australians that had served or died at Gallipoli. That was until Shannon Lovelady took to the task and did what, in many people's opinions, did what just wasn't possible. Joining us in the neighbourhood this morning to tell us a lot about the work that she has done leading and heading up the Gallipoli Dead for Western Australia. I say good morning and welcome to the neighbourhood, Shannon Lovelady.
Lovelady, thank you very much, James. Lovely to be here.
And lovely to have you with us, Shannon. The project is one which, again, if I could say it's had a conclusion, you've described as one that was a brilliant collaborative project with an outcome everybody, as I say, said wasn't possible. It was, and to use your words, you ate an elephant. You took it one bite at a time.
We did. My team and I took these men one file at a time and examined each one, over 4,500 of them, and ended up with our figure, which, no, it's not closed. The project has concluded, but should we find one that has fallen through the cracks somehow, we're more than happy to examine him and add him if he's eligible. Mm-hmm.
Now, it's a very significant program, because certainly as far as the outcome of this project is concerned, it is still something unique as an achievement to Western Australia, because there is no comparable list in any other state, is there?
That's right, it's unique to Australia because no other state knows their number of Gallipoli Dead. And I have, at this time every year, national press ringing me asking for their lists, and they just don't have them yet.
Which in itself is the motivation, or as I understand, this whole project perhaps had its beginnings when you sat down for a discussion about other things with local author Susan Morchet, and she posed the question: how many West Australians were killed?
I'm the archivist, curator and historian at Presbyterian Ladies College, and Dr. Susan Mousehart wrote our history, This Little World, for our centenary in 2015.
Yes.
And in the preparation for that, I was her research assistant, and she posed the question, how many men were killed at Gallipoli from Western Australia? And we rang several sources and no one could tell us. And I thought, well, I'm an experienced family and military historian or researcher. I can certainly look at those files and find out. It's just a number of getting help to do it. So I thought I could do it, and so we did.
You took the challenge on.
Yeah.
Now, the program itself, you got your teeth into it literally in about 2013, about June 2013.
June 2013.
And as you've indicated, you called on and achieved support from, well, literally thousands, I would suggest, from right across Australia.
Across the world, actually. I had a couple in America and one in England, and all over Australia. Volunteers who'd come forward. There were about 30 in all. Most of the files were actually done by a core group of about 9, including myself. Yes. And it was a wonderful thing to be involved in, and people just wanted to contribute.
Now, the criteria for inclusion in this obviously needed to be strict, very concise, and with its boundaries, so that it could stand the test.
That's right. At no point during the project if I couldn't stand behind the research and the result. Yes, the criteria were that they must have been born in Western Australia or enlisted from Western Australia, or they must have lived here for some time. And I deliberately left that as no time frame set, because, for example, there were a couple of English Marines who came out in the Royal Marine Light Infantry reservists, and they found at Margaret River, and one of them at Carnamah, and they were here and they intended to live the rest of their lives here, but they were called back into service when World War I started, and they left, but that was through no fault of their own. They would have actually stayed here for the rest of their lives. So I didn't set a time period for them to have lived here. And the last criteria was they must have died before the 31st of August 1921, and that was the cut-off date for the consideration as official war dead by the Commonwealth War Graves Commission, so I used the same date.
Yes. So for consistency, those boundaries were ones that clearly adhered to. Now the research itself took over 18 months to get through the bulk of and to really get through what was available, but also would have to stand the tests that you and others put through.
Yes, and sometimes it was a matter of whether a man's death was caused by their service at Gallipoli. For example, Royce Beju, who was an Albany soldier, and he was one that was put basically forward to close scrutiny, and Sandra Plale, Claire Greer and myself actually examined his repatriation file out at the National Archives, who are amazingly helpful. I couldn't have done this project without them, and all our records being online. And we determined that his death was caused by his Gallipoli service.
And Royce's story, if you can just give us that bit of background.
Sure. He was at Gallipoli for months, and he was present during some of the worst shelling of the entire campaign. He then went on to serve in France, but spent most of that time in hospital. And it was that I wasn't sure whether it was his Western Front service or whether it was his Gallipoli service that caused his cerebral vascular system damage that caused a series of strokes and ended up in his debilitating death in 1917.
And again, stories similar to that in terms of working through the broad parameters as you've had outlined. It was also necessary in terms of the ultimate eligibility, and Royce is a good example. You got together a panel of medical experts who could in themselves help support and answer some of the holes in the cheese board, you might say.
Exactly. I had some nurses and some doctors and some specialists as friends, and I called them in on board and formed the medical forensic assessment team to assess those tricky cases. And it was Royce Beju's case that actually made it clear to me that we needed to have a panel like that. And those tricky cases are put forward to the medical forensic assessment team for assessment. So they would each give their medical opinion, and then that would help weigh in on the eligibility or not of a man's death.
The submissions, all the work that was provided that obviously had gone before your task was garnished from a number of existing records and the work done by a lot of others. And to name a few, as I understand, the King Park Avenue of Honour list played an important part, as did the Fremantle Dead, the Carnamah men, the Timber men, Albany boys, to name a few, and then the huge number of honour rolls. But the significant records of both the 11th, 16th and the 28th battalions formed a huge amount of the research work that was required, because clearly, as records show, a number of our boys, our men, came from and were attached to those battalions.
Yes, and the 10th Light Horse.
And you've also made reference to the fabulous records available from the Commonwealth War Graves Commission. Yeah,
they were brilliant. I accessed their database from my end, the end user space, and they actually gave me the data from the back end of their database as well, with more information. And wonderfully generous. Great to collaborate with them on that.
And over 3,000 portfolios or records.
4,000.
The number continues to grow. We grew from this was a moving feast in terms of we're certainly I've gleaned some information on this, Shannon, and the work done by yourself and others. Many of the tasks are associated from a research perspective, and anyone that's done genealogy work at all will appreciate that names play an important challenge, or can be part of that challenge. This, I would imagine, would have been also very fundamental to validating and verifying and doing the research work that you and others did complete.
Absolutely. Not every man enlisted under his own name, of course. We have 22 men that we're aware of who signed up under an alias for various reasons. Sometimes it was escaping the law, or an expectant girlfriend, or a nagging wife, or debts, or who knows. But for whatever reason, and a few of those were also because they were underage and they didn't want their mothers to know. So we have 22 of them in our list that signed up under other names. But there are probably many more there that we don't know about.
Is there an indication of perhaps the youngest individual that might be on the list?
Well, age is a very tricky thing.
Yes.
It goes from officially the age that they stated on enlistment, which they didn't ask for a date of birth, they asked for your age in years and months. And most of those people, if they were trying to sign up saying that they were older than they were, so therefore my records only go on the stated age on enlistment.
Sure.
And that's from 17 to 47, but I know that there was a lot of lying going on in those older and younger groups. A lot of those 47-year-olds were in their 50s,
Yes.
and a lot of those 17-year-olds were much younger than that.
Again, comes back to what people anticipate the validity of records and accuracy, and in good faith, what information was provided to begin with.
Yeah.
In that context, the records themselves formed the basis of what was clearly anticipated, or you had to define it very much in an administrative role. There was not a lot of time. Easy to be distracted with the human side of, I would imagine, a lot of the stories that eventually came out of all of this work.
No, I'm very good at compartmentalising, and I did not look at the men's stories while we were crunching the numbers. I couldn't do that because I did have a deadline. I wanted to make that before Anzac Day 2015. So I was under a deadline for that, and it was only after we had crunched the numbers and got to the final figure that I, on my own, started writing the stories that I wrote about the men, and the stories were incredible. And yes, were I more easily distracted, it would have been easy to get lost in those stories rather than finishing the project.
And the outcome of all of this, perhaps we'll take a brief break, because we have time against us this morning. Shannon Lovelady, who has spent thousands of hours, along with others, in collating the wonderful dedicated Gallipoli Dead records from Western Australia, a unique project. And as Shannon, as you said, the deadline was the centennial commemoration of Gallipoli 2015, when all of this information was published. I'm fascinated by perhaps some of those human stories now that I'll ask you to share with us in just a moment or two here on 107.3. We'll take a quick break at 11 minutes to 11. Where it is now 7 minutes to 11, and my guest in the studio joining me for a chat, and it is very much a brief chat, trying to reflect on the incredible volume of work done by Shannon Lovelady and the volunteer team that collectively put together and gave us the Gallipoli Dead for Western Australia, a project that revealed something in the vicinity of 1,023 West Australians who had died as a result of their service at Gallipoli. Shannon, the work done has revealed some interesting human stories, the human side of all of this, and I'm pleased that you're going to share with us some of those examples. And this lead one, I'm really intrigued about the bigamist and what your work has revealed there.
Yes, my bigamist. Well, he was a Fremantle enlistee, and he served at Gallipoli and was evacuated off Gallipoli with severe enteritis, and it was so severe he was sent to England to recuperate. And that was at the end of 1916. He was still suffering from that. He went on a fortnight's furlough from New Year's Day 1917 and was due back on the 16th of January. Before he went on leave, he wrote to his wife Hilda, told her where he was, told her that he was doing very well, and that he would write soon. But he never actually came back from leave, and because I needed to find out whether he had lived past the 31st of August 1921,
Yes.
I went looking for him, and I didn't find a death. Poor Hilda, his wife, back in Stawell, Victoria, was destitute, basically, she and their son John, and she stayed in Stawell and waited for him. He never returned. So as for him, I found him around the corner from the chapel, getting married on the morning of the 16th of January to a local lass. That was the morning he was supposed to return. And of course that was a bigamous marriage, and I couldn't quite believe that his name was John Casanova.
John Casanova.
John Casanova.
You put that surname through the ringer, I'm sure, a few times to validate the accuracy of that story.
Yeah.
My goodness. One of the lighter sides of the human element to all of this then.
Yes, it was.
That one. And
not for the family, but yeah.
No, in real terms, one would like to think that, not to be repeated, anti-heroes. Not all the blokes came out of their service history gleaning with perhaps halos or...
No, not smelling like roses. There's a common belief that all these men were heroes, and if there's one thing that our research revealed is that not all of these men were heroes, and one in particular I like to call my anti-hero,
Yes.
and he's Arthur Hancock, a trooper with the 10th Light Horse.
Okay.
I could see from his file that he had 2 sons in an orphanage, and he was killed in the pointless battle at the Neck on the 7th of August 1915. And at first on paper I looked at his file and I thought, oh, the poor man, you know, his wife has died, his children are in care, and he's now been killed at Gallipoli. It was just so sad. But when I went looking a little bit deeper, I found that he had actually walked out on his wife Jessie in 1912. He'd flipped her half a sovereign and said, I'm off to work in the country. Left his 2 boys, who were 2 and 3 at the time, and never came back, basically. And she starved to death. So when the authorities found her, she was in a very poor state indeed. They charged him with wife desertion, and he said in his defence, well, I had money, but I didn't have it for her. I needed to buy things for myself. So he then, you know, she was taken into care in the Fremantle Women's Home, where she died. The boys were put into care, and he then continued on his merry way until he enlisted and died at Gallipoli. So I tracked down the family, actually, and told them very carefully what had happened, because they believed that their grandmother had died in childbirth with the youngest child, and they had no idea that she was actually buried at Fremantle Cemetery. So on the 99th anniversary of her death, they actually all went down there as a family and laid flowers on her grave.
My goodness. Absolutely incredible stories coming from what would have been in itself quite an achievement, but to see that you've impacted on the lives of others through the richness of this information is incredible. The fatality statistics that come from the work that you've done as well, what can you share with us there?
Well, of the days that we were at Gallipoli, I did an analysis of the most fatal months, and they were August, with 346 men killed in August, and that was 11 a day on average, West Australians. And then it was May at 282 with 9 men per day, and then it was April with 168. But you've got to remember, we only fought at Gallipoli for 6 days in April, therefore it's the highest average daily loss at 28 men per day, all from Western Australia.
It's phenomenal. When you hear those numbers and look at the role of honour, it certainly resonates in terms of the number of casualties on again, proportional basis, etc. Absolutely incredible.
Yeah, huge losses, and it's no wonder that there was a great black hole felt back here at home.
The work that was done in collating and getting this fabulous roll of honour, naming the 1,023 soldiers from WA, a huge achievement, Shannon, but it was one which, again, clearly without a number of volunteers from a very special, and I know that you're a very active member of the society, but the WAGs.
The WA Genealogical Society, yes, I could not have done it without them. And I first approached them and suggested we collaborate on this, and they agreed wholeheartedly from the beginning, and that's where I got my first volunteers. And they continued on through the project and are with me now in the Western Front Dead from Western Australia project. They also host the list, and they've been extremely supportive all the way along.
It again, in itself, perhaps gives the listener some indication how you've been able to get some of the more humanistic background to these individuals, such as Casanova and Arthur Hancock, because clearly the determination and the lateral thinking that researchers do with information, and certainly those at the West Australian Genealogical Society, indicative of what can be achieved, and even the family and the information that you've shared to the Hancock family, that would have been quite potentially very emotional set of circumstances for the family to have dealt with, rather than perhaps what they've understood to have been the family history to that point.
Yeah, when I wrote about Arthur Hancock, I actually tracked the family down, as I always did with my men that I wrote about. And I contacted them with the question if they would prefer me not to write the story. And I left it up to them. I said, if you would prefer me not to, I won't write it, I'll move on to someone else. And they said, no, write it all, every word. They were deeply impacted by what they found out and, wanted everyone to know.
Now, again, if you can just reiterate the work that's been done, the list that is the culmination of all of that work, is available to the public?
It certainly is, yes, on the WA Genealogical Society website, and it's the Gallipoli Dead from Western Australia checklist.
Now, that in itself, you and others perhaps might have thought, well, mission accomplished, job done, and put the tools down, but far from that being the case, Shannon.
Yes. Having done Gallipoli, which I'm glad that we have a number now of how many West Australians were lost there, and while that was tragic, the far greater tragedy was the Western Front, and having done Gallipoli, proven the recipe, I knew that I had to do the Western Front as well, and I'm now halfway through that project with a lot of the Gallipoli Dead from Western Australia volunteers and some new ones as well. So we are now 5,000 files deep in that, and we've just crossed 3,000 eligible people for the Western Front Dead from Western Australia project.
Wow. The reality, well, fortunately, you're not working necessarily under an imposed deadline to achieve, other than perhaps a self-imposed deadline?
Yes, I need to finish this one before April next year,
yes,
because I need time to crunch the figures and work out the statistics that we did for Gallipoli to make them available for the press and anybody who wants them. And I do want all the research available to anybody who is interested in seeing it.
Yes, the stories that need to be accurately clarified, resolved, and more importantly, the significance of being able to go to a central record of what, with all due respect, might be considered simplistic by so many people, and that is to name those geographically associated with Gallipoli Dead and the Western Front and others, but realising the amount of hours, the thousands of hours taken to achieve this is quite phenomenal. Quite phenomenal, Shannon.
A lot of time.
Yes, and again at this time of the year, very significant with Anzac Day almost upon us, as you say. Everybody wants a piece of your time, and we certainly appreciate you giving that to us this morning here in the neighbourhood. Look forward to the opportunity of talking to you again when you are further down the track with the Western Front. I know that there are a number of other individuals who continue to do similar research and that continue to support you and your team.
Absolutely, collaborative all the way.
It's is there a point of whether it be poignancy or otherwise that has come to you and your colleagues in actually producing this final Gallipoli Dead list, Shannon?
Is there a poignancy in it? Well, it is very satisfying to know that we do have that list.
Yes.
But it's never closed. We just had a recent case a week ago where one of my Western Front Dead from Western Australia researchers produced a man who had enlisted in Melbourne, and he had actually died at Gallipoli. But he'd stowed away in Melbourne with a Queensland battalion, and he was found in Western Australia waters. So with that one, we decided to not include him, although I would desperately love that figure to go up to 1024 because I think that's a nice figure. Because the intent of the criteria was that he should have been living here or enlisted from here, not just found in Western Australian waters.
It's again an indication though that the files are still open.
They are.
The jury is still out in terms of what will be or what is considered to be that finite number, and clearly whilst we hope that there are no others, the reality is it's still an open book.
Still an open book, always happy to examine anyone that anyone thinks is eligible, or if anybody can examine the files and find some more aliases for us, because sometimes their person, maybe they're under another name.
Shannon Lovelady, it has been a real pleasure to chat with you and to try and take a very, very succinct overview of the work that you've done with the team of volunteers, and that the task continues with the Western Front. Stories still to be told, and the many hours of work that lie ahead of you and others. Very much significant to so many at this time of the year, but it's one which the work never seems to finish.
No, never. No.
And is there a book that you're going to?
Yes, actually. All the articles that I wrote for the Post newspaper and more are actually going to be published in a book this year. I am delighted to actually give you the news that local councils from Fremantle all the way to Perth were approached, and most have come forward with great support and are contributing to the cost of publishing the book.
Fantastic.
So those, and that book will have the list of all the Gallipoli Dead from Western Australia men in the back.
Well, there you go. You've heard it first here on 107.3 in the neighbourhood. Shannon, again, a great opportunity though for that publication to find its place in our literary history as far as the significance, as I said, by way of paying tribute to those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice, men and women, in terms of the service that they have committed to our country. And I commend and sincerely thank you for the hard work that you continue to do.
Thank you, James. Appreciate it.
And it's been wonderful to have you in the studio this morning.
Lovely to be here. Thank you.
Here on 107.3, Shannon Lovelady, the lead, the principal that pushed and saw the completion of the Gallipoli Dead from Western Australia, a project completed in 2015 for the obvious significance of the anniversary, the centenary commemoration of Gallipoli. Here on 107.3, 7 minutes past 11.